So the first segment is this idea that so this is kind of a two-parter. One is developing your goalies, what I call the shooter's library, and also what expectations should we have as goalies and goalies parents and coaches of our shooters in practice. Okay, so there's two sides to this because for my college goalies that are playing like fall ball right now, every year I get a bunch of goalies who are just getting their asses kicked, and they're getting beat up in practice. And then for my younger goalies and my families with younger goalies, they're wondering like, what the hell do we have to work on so that we're in a good position once the spring comes? Okay, fair enough. Okay, um, so the concept that I just want to go over, I want to start with, is this idea of as a goalie, what we're doing is we are wiring a goalie. So when we want a goalie to make a save, and if you go to Lacrosse Goal University and you get the cheat sheets, you download the cheat sheets, right? Just hit get your copy. This will be that's a great freebie that everybody should be having. But one of the concepts I talk about in there is this idea that what are we trying to do? Well, we're trying to wire a goalie. So ball is coming, doesn't matter where it's coming from, but the idea is like the eyes see the ball, the brain decides where it's going, and then we move in front of that ball, right? So, but what we're doing there, I believe strongly that there is when a it's not the clock doesn't start ticking when the ball leaves the shooter's stick. It actually there is information to be gleaned from the shooter. Okay. And this is true for both the boys and the girls. And I learned this a number of years ago when it really surprised me one day. I was working with a female goalie who was a member of Lacrosse Goalie University. She was like an up and coming high school goalie, and her dad was like totally into, I can't remember what he did. He might have been like retired military or retired police, I think. Maybe it was fire. I can't remember. Anyway, he had a lot of time to help his daughter, which was great. And he had played college lacrosse. And every day after school, they were shooting. He was shooting on her, and she had kind of plateaued. Like when they called me, she had kind of plateaued. They felt for like last like 9 months, and then we worked together. We were working together steadily. She was one of my master's clients. We're on the phone like weekly, doing goalie audits, and I too was a little frustrated with this. I was like, God, what's going on? And then I asked him one day. I was like, so when you guys are working together in the backyard, tell me more about what it is you're doing. And he goes, "Oh, well, we do." And he had this very elaborate plan of where he shot from and what he would do. And then it occurred to me, listen, and I had been seeing video of them in the backyard, but not of him shooting. The camera was always slightly in front of him shooting. And I said, "Listen, do me a favor, move the camera back and show me what it looks like." And that's when I realized he was shooting on her with a men's stick, right? With the stick he had played with in college. And that's when I realized, I get it. When it comes to learning the language of lacrosse, right? And a goalie is learning what I call the shooter's library. And so what that is like it's this database of knowledge of what shooters look like. And fundamentally, we have a difference between boys and the girls, and that's pocket depth, right? So it's the style of pocket, it's the depth of pocket, it's the rules in terms of what that ball can do in there. And this was a number of years ago when we didn't really have the whip that the girl sticks now have. Some of the whip in the girl sticks is crazy, in my opinion. But the point is this: is that every shot your goalie had, like gets taken against them, it's an opportunity for that goalie to learn one more data point of what a shooter looks like. Okay, so if you are getting shot on with a shooter with a certain style most of the time. This is why I encourage coaches like, listen, you shouldn't feel like you have to shoot every warm up ball on your goalie. You can design practice so that your shooters are actually shooting. Because I believe that what is a pass, but actually just a catchable shot. Let's put your shooters in shooting lines and tell them where to shoot. And now your goalie is going to have all these data points of 10, 20 kids shooting on them. And the brain is going to process that, and they're going to start to realize, like, okay, what does that shooter look like, and what do they do? The other thing is your goalie will start to understand, like, oh, that guy or that girl has a shallower pocket. That guy plays with a pocket that's got a really big lip in it. And so the release points are different. Now, this is not fundamentally something that your goalie should be worried about every single shot, right? Because it's I don't necessarily believe that doing anything more than understanding like, oh, that pocket's is shallow, that pocket is deeper, that player is shooting sidearm, overhand, whatever. Outside of that, like I just want the goalie to just be having experiences getting shot on. Because anytime you take the shooter out of a drill, so let's say you're using tennis rackets or rapid fire stuff, or coaches using a different the incorrect stick for the gender that they're playing with, any of those times when you take that out of the or take the ball away at all and just have a goalie work on technique, um, you're missing a point for your goalie to teach that. All right. And I think that we can take a goalie and we can work on technique and things like that, but in the shooter context, so that we're not losing that data point. Okay. So when that dad, for example, that was working with the high school goalie who had plateaued, I said, listen, you've got to work with a goalie with a girl stick. And he was like, oh man, I don't want to. It's so shallow, like whatever. I'm like, listen, one, you're gonna be able to rifle it because you'll surprise yourself. But two, she's gonna be learning that, developing her shooter's library. And then now the response, the save library, or that the wiring of the goalie, right? So ball's going stick side high. It's like we're, typing into a keyboard, stick side high. And now the response we're getting on the screen is the goalie going, oh, this is my move to stick side high. That's what we're doing. Okay. So developing your shooter's library, there's a couple things, concepts here. So when you send your goalie, like let's say your goalie is, grade, let's say they're a freshman, let's say they're grade 9, and you send them to a goalie clinic where they've got college shooters or the best high school shooters in the area. Well, that's a massive gap, right? And your goalie, if your goalie, this, so I had a goalie that was basically an eighth grader and was playing with the varsity, like practicing with the varsity all the time. I can't remember why, but but I would say that this goalie, when they went through eighth and ninth grade, they didn't really develop as much as we thought they were because they were just getting shot like cannons, right? The goalie was not physically able to really. They could see the ball, they could kind of know where the ball is going, but they had no chance to move in front of it, and it created a lot of frustration with the goalie. The development was kind of sad, and I wasn't really happy with it, and that's where I developed my understanding that your goalie doesn't necessarily have to make a massive jump to get better. Yes, um, it can be a challenge. It can rekindle a goalie's motivation. It can make them excited to play. Playing up it creates some adrenaline, and you can use that to your advantage. But sometimes taking too much of a jump too often is not really necessary. That shooter's library is not what your goalie's ready for yet. It's like eating spicy food, right? It's like if you go right to the 4 jalapenos on the menu, you're not going to have a good time. But if today you have like 1 jalapeno, you're pretty good, right? And you go back to your team, the level you're playing, it's like, okay, I'm learning. And then when you're ready, yeah, you go to 2 jalapenos, right? And then you're like, okay, yeah, this is good. But if you jump to 4 jalapenos, you're not going to have a good time, right? So so I encourage my goalies as much as possible, and encourage my coaches who I get a chance to talk to. Listen, do everything you can in practice to have shooters shooting on a cage. And if your shooters are shooting on a cage, then your goalie ideally is in that cage, because I believe every shot on a cage in practice is a chance for a goalie to learn. And if that goalie is on the sideline, we're missing those opportunities, right? So now that leads me into kind of my second part of today, which is expectation of shooters in practice. Right. So one of the things I've been quite frustrated with this year is I've got 2 goalies that I work with, 2 college goalies that I work with, who are just getting absolutely beaten up in practice. Okay. Now, for those of you that have high school and junior high school goalies, you can probably raise a big amen to the fact that your goalie's probably getting their ass kicked in practice. Kids are hitting them. Greg Barnhart posted a video of his daughter Abby today getting a shot square in the chest in the middle of a game. She took it like a champ. She's a 2025. For those of you guys that are in the lacrosse goalie of the future group, go check it out. Okay. Um, but so in a game, you're thinking like, oh, okay, yeah, she got hit in the chest, but getting hit in the chest is like the furthest from scoring you could possibly, next to shooting it wide, than you could be, right? But in practice, uh, this is where I have kind of an interesting philosophy here. So my philosophy um, as a coach is this: is that a rising tide raises all ships. Okay, a rising tide raises all ships, and that starts with the goalie. Right. So when our goalies are better, our shooters get better. When our shooters get better, our teams get better. When our teams get better, our programs and our clubs get better, and that makes everybody better. And yeah, so it all starts with the goalie. So now, back in like the '90s, all right, for all you goalies, I know none of you were born then, but the parents will remember the '90s. It's an amazing time. But back in the '90s, there was this trend amongst goalies who, when they got hit in practice, they would look back at the shooter and they would yell at them. And it was like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, blah, 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 whatever. And so I took this kind of from two angles. One, I thought, yeah, okay, that's true. Like, getting hit in practice is really not valuable. But secondly, I always said it's up to the goalie to come protected enough to withstand that shot. Because, like I said, every shot on a goal in practice is a chance for a goalie to be learning how to make that save, right? The attitude your goalie has to have, no matter what, is I believe I have the ability to stop every shot. And if the ball goes by them, the question is then, what did I need to do to stop that shot? Now, shooters in practice need to have the ability to shoot, and if I put anything in my shooters heads where I tell them not to shoot, or they're worried about hitting the goalie, I don't want that, because I want my shooters, male or female, to be unleashed on game day. I want them to rifle the ball wherever they feel comfortable, from whatever distance they are, is good for them, because like some kids can shoot from 15 yards and out, and other kids can only shoot from 4 yards and in. I get all that, right? But the idea is that it kind of goes hand in hand. So, one of the parents of one of my college goalies, who's a member of Lacrosse Goalie University, uh, you know, they'll Facebook message me all the time and be like, "Oh my god, my goalie's getting absolutely destroyed in practice." And this has been like a 2-year trend. I've got another a parent who I don't work with in Lacrosse Goalie University, but they send me the same data. These are Division One goalies, okay? And so the idea that at the Division One level, a goalie is getting hit in practice bothers me. It bothers me. It's okay to have like the occasional shot, but if goalies are getting hit off the head, if they're getting hit square in the chest, if they're getting hit square in the thighs, your team sucks as a shooter, right? If that's a collegiate program. Now, if you're a high school program, if you're a 2025, a 2024, a 2026, if you're a 2022 on a program that's not great, you are going to get hit in practice. Your job as the goalie is to be protected enough to withstand that. That is your job. Okay. Because if you get hit in practice and you miss a rep, to me, that's more on the goalie not being protected for practice than it is on the shooter, because I want that shooter to develop a shooting sense and be deadly. And you know what? They're going to hook a couple, they're going to miss a couple, and they're going to hit you. But so it's a little bit of a trade-off. So sometimes, I hear comments on videos posted on Facebook, and people are like, "Oh my god, the defense sucks," and yeah, blah blah, blah, whatever. The goalie's getting beat up. It's like, well, that's really what we signed up for, right? Our job as a goalie is, if I get hit with a ball, I just did my job. If you hit me with the ball, right? If you shoot in my stick and I make a save and everybody on the sideline goes, "Yay," I know in my head that you just shot me in the stick. If you shoot me in the head and I make a save, um, hey, that's what I'm here for. Okay. Boys and girls, men or women, doesn't matter. right? But what do I expect of shooters in practice? Well, here's what I expect. One, as a coach, I want to put my, if we're running like one on O drills, like if I'm working with kids behind the cage and we're working on dodges and they're coming above goal line extended and they're getting to 5 and 5 and they're going to roll dodge and shoot high, I'm going to tell them where I want them to shoot. We're going to create a scenario where I would tell the kids, all right, listen, here's what you're going to do. Everybody's going to drive to the right side of the cage. And then you're going to inside roll. And I want every shot to go far side low, right? Okay. So whether if your goalie's a righty or lefty, they know that, all right, the shooter's coming up. They're above goal line. They're going to go 5 and 5. They're going to inside roll. They're going to far side. Now, I don't want the goalie to cheat so much that they're like way ahead of the ball. I want them to make it realistic too. But the idea is that that goalie is now learning what that shooter looks like. And if you have your entire team do it, then they know what every one of those shooters like. These are all data points that your goalie is like storing in their brain, right? Not necessarily consciously, but just subconsciously. It's just all starting to add up, because you'll have the tall girl with the really long legs, and she's gonna look one way as she does that inside roll. And then you get the other girl who's like short and stocky, and she looks a different way. And same thing for the boys. You get, the big, tall, lanky gazelle of an attackman driving and then inside roll, and then that stick comes around and it's like super, it feels like it's 9-10 feet off the ground. That's one thing. And then you get the short little compact attackman that makes, now I'm learning all that. But now when when we say like, okay, I want you to shoot those ball off stick low or anywhere else that you want them to be, um then what's on the shooter is like, okay, now they have a goal, right? It's like, okay, it's like a golfer with a wedge from 90 yards. If that golfer just comes up and hits the wedge and hits it 120 yards, well, did that help? No, but in lacrosse, we just let kids shoot all randomly, and we don't want that. I want to scale that down, because if I scale that down, one, I'm putting more of a demand on my shooters to be more accurate, and then also I'm protecting my goalies a little bit. And if all of a sudden, if I say I want that shot going, off stick low, and you tag the goalie in the stick side shoulder, well, listen, shooter, you're an idiot. What the hell are you doing? You're not helping anybody here. Up your game, right? So that's my expectations there. All right. And now uh some goalies go like, "Oh yeah, I don't need a warm up." I had an 8th grade goalie this year in Lacrosse Goal University, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't need to warm up. I just hop in." I'm like, "No, you don't get it. The purpose of a warm up period," and I'm not talking about a coach shooting on the goalie, because if you just have one coach shooting on your goalie, a couple of things happen. One, it's like we're insulating that goalie, and we don't want him to get hurt. Well, okay. Um, Having a coach shoot on the goalie with like beach balls doesn't help when they actually get in practice and get shot on for real. And then also getting shot on by one type of shooter can be limiting to the development of a goalie. And I didn't realize that till much later, till like in my college age years. But that's what we Coach Scully, who maybe listen to this. They did that. He was my shooter, and that's fine. And then I went out to practice and I was ready. But I realized like, oh wow, I missed all this development because of that, right? So now we know better, right? So that's what's really important to understand, is that I want to have um, your goalie get as many shots as possible from as many people as possible, so that they develop. I call that the language of lacrosse. They're learning what shooters can do with the ball and from where. And even if you want to be creative with it, you say like, all right, girls, like, guys, girls, we're going to be going across the front of the crease, and you're going to you're going to rocker step in front of the cage and underhand scoop between your legs, top corner. Have fun with that. I remember I did that with a team that I was coaching up here in Canada, and I said, "Okay, guys, this is what we're gonna do." And mostly they're box kids, so they only play one-handed. I'm like, "Okay, we're all gonna come in from the left side. For those of you guys that are righties, you got to put your stick on your left hand, like whatever." They're like, "Oh, whatever." And then I said, "Okay, you're gonna come in front of the net. You're gonna catch a pass, and then you're gonna scoop it between your legs." Um, and I think we picked a spot. And sure enough, that weekend, two of the kids scored in their box games, like that. And so what's cool now with like Instagram is we've kind of unleashed shooters to be have a lot of creativity, but the goalies aren't really keeping up. And part of that is because they're either out of the cage for those situations, or they're not seeing those shots at all in practice. So we're missing that development of that shot library. And then what we got to do with the expectation of the shooters is, listen, I don't want you hitting our goalies ideally, but I get it that you have to learn too. And so we have to have a room for that. And if you hit the goalie, yes, we want you to do better, but two, I just want that goalie protected. And especially in practice, the goalie can shed down for games. I don't care. But for practice, I want you to be able to withstand anything, because you practice is where we are making mistakes and trying stuff, right? And so we don't want to stifle that at all, because then if we stifle that, to protect the goalie, well, that's going to manifest itself in a game, right? Like, let's say you've got a really good midfielder on your team and they've got a cannon, and in practice they hook one and hit the goalie in the head, and the goalie gets a concussion. Well, what do you think is going to happen to that kid in practice in the next game when they have a similar type of shot, right? It's like Ted Lasso when the guy kills the dog, right? And then goes out for the next penalty kick, and what is he remembering? Killing the dog. We don't want that, right? We want that kid to just be unleashed. And part of, I think, the goalie's responsibility to help those shooters develop is to be protected at practice, right? So that we can be prepared for that. Because I want the goalie in the net for that shot. I don't want to pull the goalie out if I don't have to, right? Does that make sense? Right? So if that makes sense, leave me a comment. That'd be great. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com, check it out, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.